Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome once again to another
Review.
Torah review. Giving all glory to the Most High God, creator of all things and everything, the Yehudah, who has created us all and has given us all life. Thanking the Most High God for all things and everything. Thanking the Most High God also for everyone out there who's diligently following this segment, this series, with Nasik, Zurishaddai and Yehudah, who's been reviewing the previous week's portion. And that portion that he's going to be reviewing this week is going to be Tazria Metzora. So I'm thanking the Most High God for the life of Nasik Zurishaddai. And at this time, I'll hand it over to him. It's on you, Nasik.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to give praise to the Supreme Telling Universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov, God of Abraham, Master Jacob, and due respect to the platform on Chief Prince Ariel, and also the host, Chief Uzael, and to the Prince's Chief, brothers and sisters, Marine, the Rabbinate, the Kohanim, greet you all and tell my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, which means peace be unto you, and Shabbat Shalom, which is still a little bit early for Shabbat. At this time, I'll be, first before I start, I'd like to say, Adonai Sapai Titaku Biagi Tiateka, O Lord, Dama Listen, Mouth shall declare that praise. Last time I was speaking, I spoke on the Sidra Shemini, which is the 8th day, and we know about the tragic of the first high priest out of Israel, who was Aaron, who was Moses' older brother, who lost, Aaron lost his 2 oldest sons, his firstborn and his secondborn son, that those 2 guys he lost, that offered, changed the ritual up and offered strange fire. And we discussed that last time. And also we cover a dietary menu that was prescribed by the creator. And I emphasize that the dietary menu was prescribed not so much for health reasons, but for holiness. And that's why it is, for us to be in a state of purity and holiness and serving this creator. We can always say there's some benefits about eating a certain way. Then other guys could say they have benefits and athletes and other areas that don't eat that particular way. So moving on with that. Also, what was interesting is that when they talk about the certain creeping things on earth, on the dietary law, they mention about 8, but they never mention the snake as being one of the creeping things that you touch and you will become unclean. And that's it's interesting to know that certain predatory poisonous creatures, such as a snake or a scorpion or something like that, they specify you're not supposed to eat it. It's unclean to eat, but it don't specify like the other 8 that if you touch them, they're dead, because you will have to kill them, destroy them, in order to protect yourself or family. So that's one reason that's pretty much giving common comment on that particular point in the dietary law. This week we encounter, well, the last Shabbat, they encounter a double portion, as we like to say, which is 2 sidros, 2 different main themes, which was a Tazria, which means dealing with seed and woman conceiving of childbirth, and then it deals also Metzora. Now, normally we be wondering, say, some people might ask, and I have been asked in the past, why sometimes we just deal with one portion or one sidra, and then sometimes, some weekends, we deal with 2 sidros. And the answer is that the Hebrew calendar that we have is a lunar calendar, got lunar months, but it coincides with a solar year. But technically, we have basically, 51, pretty much 51 weeks out the year that we have amongst the lunar calendar. and hence we have 54 sidros. So in a year that we add an extra month, which is called Adar, the first Adar, and then we have Adar Shani. We add an extra month within the Hebrew calendar that's normally have 12 months. It gets a 13th month, 7 times in a 19-year period. And usually the years that they normally add the extra month is usually around the 3rd month, the 6th month, the 8th month, the 11th month, the 14th month, the 17th month, and the 19th month. Excuse me, I keep saying months. The 19th year, excuse me. All right, so let me start over. The third year, they add the extra month. They add extra month in the 6th year. They add an extra month in the 8th year. They add an extra month in the 11th year. They add an extra month in the 14th year, and they add an extra month in the 17th year and the 19th year. So 7 times within a 19-year period on a Hebrew calendar, they add a month. And sometimes it fluctuates between 3 years or 2 years before they add an extra month. So then those particular double portions we read is spread out. But normally, since we have 51 weeks, and then sometimes certain holy days come up on a Shabbat. So therefore, you have a different reading during the Shabbat as opposed to the normal Sidra. So you might skip a Sidra, and the way we would try to do it within a year cycle and go beyond it. The way we do finishing a Sidra within a year cycle is mostly from a Babylonian perspective, Babylonian Talmud custom. In Jerusalem, they would take actually a 3-year cycle to finish the first 5 books of Moses. All right, so mostly a lot of some congregations, such as conservatives or constructionists, would have a shorter reading every Shabbat as opposed to other congregations. They would read the whole Sidra. And normally, when you have a double Sidra, just for interest, that they normally focus on, in most synagogues, they mostly focus on the first one. And then the Haftorah is taken from the second part of the Sidra. So, in this case here, we're doing Tazria and Metzora. So, and most times, those that will follow like a rabbinic or a traditional approach to reading, they read the Tazria, and they would go through the Aliyah through there, and then they'll do the Haftorah coming from Metzora. All right, so that being said, I hope I explained why, this is the first of all the double Sidras that we begin. And like I said, and when we have the leap month, then we have very little, even less, a double Sidra during the leap year. Okay, now I'd like to explain a little bit about Tazria. All right, they deal with rituals of purification for a woman after childbirth, and methods of diagnosing and treating, but basically diagnosing and addressing a variety of skin diseases. And then when we get to the Metzora, we mostly focus on methods of purification for what we style as a leper, appearance and treatment or addressing of a fungus or mildew in the home, or ritual impurity, or could be clothing, part of clothing, and ritual impurity resulting from contact with discharge from sex organs, and the type of offerings you bring. So now I would start off in the Tazria. That deals with chapters, and from the Masoretic text, the 12th chapter of Leviticus, going to the 13th chapter, inclusive the 59th verse. Then we go into Metzora, which is the 14th chapter of Leviticus, first verse, and it goes to the 15th to the 33rd verse. 15th chapter, 33rd verse. So that ends that. All right, so I like to, on the way, just start off opening with the first chapter.
Leviticus chapter 12.
Yeah, chapter 12, first verse.
Leviticus chapter 12,
Yeah.
verse 1. And Yehodah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman be delivered and bear a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of the impurity of her sickness shall she be unclean.
Okay,
And
I just like to speak on that, just in case people are not clear. When a woman goes through her monthly cycle, administrative cycle, I um, I know in churches they don't speak on it as much, and I'm not sure if they speak on it in the mosque, congregations as well. But I know amongst Israelites and um, amongst people that practice the rabbinic tradition, that when a woman has her monthly cycle, she become unclean. But unclean, when we have it's a bad translation of the contents, because it's not like she's really like Rabbi Chief and Yamin has spoken on earlier. It's not that um, she has poor hygiene. She's ritually unfit to be around anything that's sacred and dealing with the Creator, or anybody that's gonna have to deal with the Creator and be in contact with the woman at the particular time. But what's interesting is that it says that she reaches this state when she have a child, and you say, "Well, wow, that's something that she is put out of a holy setting by following a command, helping a man produce and say, be fruitful and multiply." So, and that's one of the strange things. So some people wrestle with that concept because it's no particular reason given why should she be considered an outsider from the book. All we have is just comments or and discussions on it. So she, when we read Genesis, uh, we know that God created male and female and created he them. But then when the formed man of the dust of the ground, he was told to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. So most people refer to that was man's obligation, and she helps him fulfill that obligation, that part of the obligation, and willingly, and therefore, and she also gets time to focus on rearing her offspring, her child. So now we're gonna go just a little bit further in this here.
Verse 3. And in the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall continue in the blood of purification 3 and 30 days. She shall touch no hollow thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification be fulfilled.
Okay. All right. It's a lot of discussion in contrast, about her purification. Once the days are fulfilled, how she really go through her purification, because we know that in most ancient cultures, we're dealing with our way of life. They had what they, either it was near a stream, you had well water, but the regular water we have in the house, though, we know we're in captivity. The well water we have in the house is not what you call mind kind living waters, so to speak. And what I'm saying is that most of us, especially in the big large cities, our waters mostly come from the reservoir, and that's more, a water that's captured there, where it's contained, so to speak. Even though it might be big, even though it might, be filled up, it's contained, so to speak. Um, And there's a lot of discussions that I would, ask people of their various congregations, take it to their teachers and their rabbis or kohanim or the chief men, and ask them details about what's the difference between the shower being clean as going to dumping in, what Jewish people and what the people from Ethiopia had is what they call they pronounce it a mikvah, which is I might pronounce it mikvah with a W sound, which is a body of water, but it's from living water, flowing water in and out. So and it brings about a lot of issues. But one thing, I'm not going to focus on that now. Like I said, I would like for you to bring it to your different leaders and teachers, to discuss those things. That how do we actually be clean and how we not be clean, because it's penalties involved when a woman is not sufficiently clean after she passes through that cycle, whether it's a regular monthly cycle or childbirth cycle. She's not sufficiently clean. So those are just things to consider and bring up amongst different congregations. I don't want too much to influence you, other than say, examine, question, and discuss certain things. But one of the things I like to share here is that they talk about the child being circumcised, the male child, and on the 8th day. Now, what we discover here is only 2 actual major spots that it focus on time related to circumcision. I just will go back just a little bit myself to Genesis, I think the 17th chapter.
Do you want me to go there, or you have it?
I'll take it, because you be working harder.
All right.
All right, so I go back to Genesis 17th chapter. I think around, that should be the 12th verse. I'll let you know in a moment. Let me see, Genesis 12. No, 12. Let's pick it up from the 17th chapter. Yeah, 17. I said 17th. 17th chapter. All right, the 12th verse. I'm gonna start from the 12th verse. All right, matter of fact, I'm gonna start from the 11th verse. It's this Genesis, the 17th chapter, the 11th verse. And you shall be circumcised. And this is the Creator speaking to Abraham, just for some insight. Before his name was changed completely to, in the early part of the chapter, his name was changed from Abram to Abraham. Abram to Abraham, as you would say in English. And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. 12th verse. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every male throughout your generations. He that is born in the house or brought with money of any foreigner that is not of thy seed, he that is born in thy house and he that is brought with thy money must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. Now, when we go back to the 12th chapter of Tazria, it says, when it comes down to that, it says in the 3rd verse, and in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. So now we had a general specification in Genesis. Genesis, you got to be at least 8 days old. But here in Leviticus, we know that at the 8th day, he must be circumcised. So that means that, well, circumcision, operation, something like that there, that's elective, that you actually have an elective operation, something that's not major, something that's not really going to be life-threatening. You mean to tell me you know, I mean, that something that's not major and life-threatening, you're not supposed to do on a Shabbat. But when it comes to circumcision, that's not life-threatening. You know, it's major when it comes to ritualistic work and the parts of the covenant. That is done on a Shabbat and during the daytime, and it specifies that day. Now, we know people will say, okay, day has a lot of meanings, because we know that it says it was evening, you know, and it was morning, one day in Genesis. And we know that gives a totality. The word day has a lot of different variations. And we know also that day could have another extreme interpretation where it said, the day you left Egypt, you should remember the day you left out of the land of Egypt. We know we left that night from our houses, but the books say we're supposed to remember the day, which is another thing to explain later on. But when it comes down to the circumcision, you know, that is done even on Shabbat. And as people say, well, would that not be violating the Shabbat? And then you would say, okay, the Shabbat is a sign between God and Israel. The Shabbat is also a covenant. But those that go back, I'm not going to go back in Genesis. I might have read it fast. But the circumcision is also a sign between us and God. And also, the word covenant is used at least 4 to 5 times, something like that, in dealing with circumcision. So that when you circumcise the child on that 8th day, in the 8th day, you are actually elevating holiness on a higher level than even Shabbat. Because the Shabbat is a sign between God and Israel. And it's a covenant between God and Israel, as it would be literally written in the book. But when it comes to the circumcision, it's a sign, and the word covenant is mentioned several times within that. Now, you can never be too old to get circumcised, because a guy might come in late, or you might buy a servant for money, or whatever the case is. Or health reasons, you might delay it because of health reasons. Because normally they say 8 days, the decay thing in the blood comes in, where you could the blood will clock a lot better. That's it's true medically, but they didn't have all that in mind back then medically to say that the K gonna jump in.
Vitamin K.
Right, vitamin K, yes. But what we do know is that you can, when a person say, I'm too old to be circumcised, if you a descendant of Abraham, you want to be part of that covenant between Abraham's God, which is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and you're a descendant of him, then you would be part of the covenant, with the Creator. And one of the things that I like to also focus on, because you find a lot of guys, Israelites. I heard that some Israelites even today don't figure circumcision is important enough, because I got a circumcised heart, and that that's something that you could actually do. If you didn't do it, if someone else didn't come in, at 8 days old, born in this way of life, we have a circumcised. And some people are circumcised just being in the right location, not even being in this way of life. So the circumcision is such an important thing for males, and not the females, but for males, that it should be done. And one of the areas that I like to bring out in dealing with the circumcision, when it's a male child, her strictness of the woman is only for 7 days. that strictness, then that's the blood that's really the contaminated blood as it was considered. But for 33 days, she goes through what they call, Dam Tahor, blood of purification. So it's a different type of blood. One is unclean blood, which is the first 7 days after she had a childbirth, just like a regular administrative cycle. And then 33 days, she goes through a purification cycle of blood. Now I will address that in a moment, briefly again. But then when we get to the female, everything is doubled in that area. Now, why is double? It's like, once again, nothing in the scriptures tell us why it's double, other than that it is double. 14 days for a female, and she goes through that strict off limits stage, and then 66 days, that she go through that purification. So some answers, some of the things it says that the female going to repeat the same cycle when she become grown. That's, for those that might want to accept that and say they're satisfied with that, good. Others might say, well, she brought back another female, that because they're being tracked, this is other commentaries now, that Eve, Mother Hawa, had first bit of the forbidden fruit, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And therefore, and when she had the children and pain, and pain and childbirth, that this would, she brought pain into the world because she's supposed to have it, just like say chickens lay eggs, then it would no problem. Just drop them with no pain. So, those are some of the areas, they bring about that's part of her punishment, to be ostracized for a moment, set to the side for a moment. It's much more, to that story, but I'm not going to focus on that because that's not really all about this particular sidra. But what I would like to share on this particular sidra is that when the days are fulfilled, the bringing. Matter of fact, we could read through it, and then I'll speak a little bit on it. So you can pick it up from there, Chief. All right, let's skip a few verses down after the sixth.
Where you want me to go to?
All right, we'll pick it up from 6th verse.
Verse 6.
Yes.
Leviticus 12, verse 6. And when the days of her purification are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering, unto the door of the tent of meeting unto the priest. And he shall offer it before Yehovah, and make atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the fountain of her blood. This is the law of her that beareth, whether a male or female. And if her means suffice not for a lamb, then she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her. She shall be clean.
All right, right there. All right. Now, that completes that particular section. But one of the things I like to point out is that the difference, that the Creator want her to bring some kind of offering. And you say, well, okay, what did she do wrong for it to be a sin offering? She had a baby. All right, the baby came to the world healthy. But she also risked death. Her life was held in jeopardy. One of the matriarchs died in childbirth. Some women have a child and go through so much pain, they might have made a vow that wouldn't stand, because they might say, I'm not going to have any more children in life because of the pain I went through. So they make a vow. Some people that was fortunate enough to be in the hospital when they wife had the baby and going through labor, sometimes the wife might call them all kind of names, saying all kind of stuff from the pain. They might swear and make all kind of swears and commitments to the Creator. So that's it. That's it. But then one thing that's blessing, the blessing to be able to forget. Sometimes we forget the pain you was in. That's a blessing. Some of the pains you go through in life. That's a blessing. But that if she can't afford a lamb, then she bring two turtle doves or young pigeons. Now, you wonder, you say, okay, why is it? You say, turtle doves or pigeons, and why do it be in that particular order when it talk about turtle doves or pigeons? Now, let's look at those particular creatures. Doves mate for life, and pigeons mate for life. Doves look a little bit prettier than the pigeon, but they mate for life, and the pigeon mate for life. But when one dove loses his mate, it'll go on for a little while and then get another mate. But when a pigeon loses its mate, it will never mate again. So it seems like the pigeon seems a lot more loyal to his mate than a dove. So it seems like it should just focus on the pigeon more so than the dove. Hence, I guess that's why doves cry. Maybe that Brother Prince made come up with that song like that. Yeah, they cry for a little while, but they move on. But pigeons, when they mate, and if that one of the mates, die, a pigeon won't mate with another pigeon again. That's it. Once they have mated. So that's something interesting to consider. What message that a subliminal message is telling the female. That usually that when you unite, you're supposed to unite for life. And it also shows a relationship with Israel to the Creator. That if we're supposed to be the feminine part to our God, from being a child to being a wife to the supreme intelligence of the universe, then as a nation, then we are charged with being unfaithful. Though we might be the darling, of the Most High, the most upright, we sometimes will leave and we'll look for a mate someplace else. Usually that's mostly a charge for Israel. Where a pigeon, a little bit more humble bird, mates for life. So that means we should always be attached to the Creator forever and have nobody else. So those are some of the lessons we could learn from that particular offering. So now we're going to go into the 14th chapter, a little bit of the same Sidra, Tazria.
Chapter 14?
Yeah, 14, yes.
Give me a second here.
Okay.
Gotta search for
it. No, sorry, 13. Sorry, 13. You're right, 13. Sorry, I'm my mistake. I was going ahead. 13.
Chapter 13. And this thing is giving me a little bit of trouble.
Okay. Well, I'll start off and then you can pick it up.
Yehudah spoke unto Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man shall have in his skin of his flesh a swelling, scab, or bright spot, it is on the skin of his flesh, like the disease of leprosy, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons the priest. And the priest shall look on the disease and the skin of the flesh, and if the hair in the plague has turned white, and the disease looks deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a disease of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean.
I'll stop right there. All right, let's stop right there. Okay. Now, that is a real serious situation where one, out of all the things you could be focused on, and the Creator focused on the biggest organ of the body, which is your skin. So that means that if you got one long arm, one short arm, hunchback, one big eye, one small eye. People just look at you. And that's it. I mean, you say, okay, well, you have a little bit of unfortune here, or you can have an extra finger here or less fingers there, a little bit of abnormality there. But when it gets to this, it said, this person is brought to the priest. And you know what's interesting? It didn't say he went to the doctor himself. Somebody else, we'll focus on this particular thing, is that somebody else got to see what's going on with this individual. And somebody look at you. I was joking with a few people, my son and a couple of brothers, and I said, it reminded me of what we used to say on the job when people say, what it look like? Can't call it, ain't gonna spoil it. And here it is. It looks like something, but the guy who's bringing them to the priest is not going to call it. He's going to bring it to the priest to make that call. And that's something that sometimes a lesson could be learned too, even in this tragic moment. One of the lessons that could be learned is that sometime when a guy got strung out on drugs, crack, alcoholism, anything like that, he said, you need to go to the, to get some help. You need to go to the, AAA or whatever it is to get off them drugs, get off of that. Or if you got, today we say, oh man, you got a scar or something, you better go to the doctor and check that out. What is humane here is that somebody is accompanying him to find out what's wrong with him. So that's a care already taken for this individual that has a problem. Because sometimes a person can have a problem and you cannot really see the problem yourself. It takes other people looking at you. Your eyes look out, it really don't look in. Your very physical eyes look out, they don't look in. So sometimes you really can't see what's going on with you and what's going on with yourself. So therefore it has to be your friend, a real friend, and say, that don't look right on you. Something look out of whack on you. It is how bad it is. Well, can't call, ain't gonna spoil it. We're gonna go to the Rofe or the doctor or the priest in this case. And that's what happened. And not only that, he said, I'm going with you because I'm concerned. And then the priest look upon him. And if it is a serious situation, he pronounced him unclean. Now, the priest amongst Israelites is not only, for this lack of a better word, a religious spiritual leader of the nation, but he's also the individual that diagnoses ailments, physical ailments on people within the nation. The priest supposed to bring you closer to the Creator. And in this case, he sends somebody away from not only, from his people. So the priest is supposed to have a good rapport with people, but yet he gonna isolate this individual from people. If the situation be bad. Let's read a little bit more because there's a lot more we can learn from this. We stopped at the 4th verse.
Verse 4, give me a second.
Right.
Verse 4 reads, if the bright spot is white in the skin of his flesh, and it looks not deeper than the skin, and the hair on it has not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him who has the disease for 7 days.
All right, keep going. Keep going.
And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the disease appears to have stayed in place, and the disease has not spread over the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the disease is somewhat dark, and the disease did not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean.
All right. First of all, went to 14 days because the priest ain't sure, because his word going to seriously affect not only that individual, but anybody that depends on the individual for any kind of survival. So that's how serious it is. So he wants to be sure. Now, we see the same symptoms. We can read the same symptoms, but we don't have the authority to diagnose the symptoms. Though we read the same thing the priest's supposed to read. We're supposed to see the same thing the priest's supposed to see. But it's not our authority to make that call. So he waits to go 14 days, and he gives them the benefit of the doubt and said it was a scab, and he pronounced him clean. But let's go on a little bit further.
7. It reads, but if the scab spreads out in the skin, after that he has been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen by the priest again. And if the priest sees that, behold, the scab spreads in the skin, then the priest shall announce him unclean, that is leprosy.
Okay. Now, one of the things is, I like to point this out. We call it leprosy in English, but it's not that what they refer to as leprosy today. It's not those skin disease today. And what is even interesting, the way the book describes it, and they're going to go through several things. I'm going to skip it and go into the next portion of the Metzora just a little bit for a couple minutes. And I'll probably have to revisit part of it, next time, because next week is tomorrow is a double Sidra as well. But one of the things is that we must look at is that this skin affliction is a skin affliction that seemed to be divinely, caught, and is no medical salve to put on it. That's number one. And also, this type of what they call zara'at, that particular, what referred to in English, Hebrew, but in English they say leprosy. This is not contagious. That skin problem he got is only on him. He becomes contagious as far as ritually making somebody unclean. It's like a woman that's on a monthly that would touch somebody while she's in that state of impurity, then that would disqualify the individual for being around something holy for a moment. Well, that's the exact same thing with the person that has this here zara'at as described in scripture, that individual is, if he touch you, that don't mean you catch it. Now, measles, some people could get measles. Some people get mumps. Some people get chicken pox to get touched. They say the COVID, people get that. But this skin problem here, which is the biggest organ in the body, that gets it, and it starts from a spot, that is not contagious to the next individual. It's only bad for the individual and spread on the individual. All right, and so he's and then the priest would pronounce the individual clean. Then all of a sudden, and then he realized the guy come back. He's being brought back, and he said, "Oh wow!" It just subsided for a moment, went through an isolation period for a moment, and then it reactivated again. That's how you know it's a divine thing, because one thing when you go to the doctor, you look for the doctor, say, what medicine I need to take? You look for the doctor, say, can you fix this? The priest don't even say, I could fix this. All he's going to tell you is that you got a problem. And isolation, and what a person do when he's isolated? Human beings, isolation is not good for human beings. That's why those that go and get incarcerated, and they do something while incarcerated, they wind up being put in isolation. And isolation is psychologically destructive to the human being, because we're meant to be social creatures. So now, if we isolated, we can't interact with anybody, we start to deteriorate and die, spiritually and mentally. So imagine this guy here now, isolated. He was brought there by, we would call it, I would like to say, a friend to the priest. Because he was brought to the priest, not that he went to the priest on his own. And his friend had to step back from him after the priest said he got to be isolated. Family members got to step back from him. Now, mind you, now he can still eat, but he's put without, and if it's a walled city, he's put outside the wall. You know, back then when he was encamped around the Mishkan, he's put outside the camp. You know, and the people looking at him from the outside, checking on him, see if he's all right from the outside, but nobody really interacting with him that much. So I just want to focus on just a little bit in the 14th chapter, the Metzora, on that, because they give you a lot of descriptions on this here, and different ways it is, you know, some people lose their hair, and we all had this book here, so I'm not going to belabor it this particular time. I just want to go into the next chapter, next Sidra, the Metzora, the 14th chapter, just a little bit.
So chapter 14.
Yes. So you got, but here at the cleansing of them, I like to finish on somewhat of a good note. But you find that this thing could happen on a person's skin. It could happen on a house. It could happen on his clothing. You know, it could happen on like most people had water skins to drink. I mean, wine skins to drink out of, animal skins to drink out. It could happen on something like that. You know, those vessels that they use of skin. Now, one of the interesting things, matter of fact, I'm just going to read a few verses of the next portion of Metzora. But one of the, yeah, but not yet, Chief. One of the interesting things is that when a person have leprosy, you know, in the skin, that's really, really rough, you know, because that's right home, right here, and, you know, on the body. But when they have it, you can have it in your house. And sometimes people say, well, the Creator might give you a warning. It could be what they consider a fungus in the house. And they get, you know, they tell you how you deal with the house in this situation. But who comes in? The priest. Once the priest, you know, if you have a mole or something strange, little spot in your house that seems to don't fit, that and look like a fungus or whatever. So they have the priest come in, and we know when he come in, he walks in, looks at the place, and have you take all the stuff out the house. If it looks like that, you know, and then if we can, you know, before you do that, you know, you get that spot straightened out as we read the chapter. Those that read it, and when he brings those pieces out, not only people could see what you have, it's a humbling experience, but you can see also what you refuse to loan to the next neighbor. I thought you didn't have a rake. I thought you didn't have an extra sickle. I thought you didn't have a harness, because you ain't got an ox no more. You could use them the mules. So the Creator can expose you as well as teach you when you take all that stuff out. Some of us look at it from the perspective that when they bring the stuff out the house and the priest, you know, pronounce the house unclean and with leprosy, imagine he could go in and he could come out and he's not contaminated with the leprosy, and then he pronounced it unclean. And what is really unique, that After a period of time, he could go in and inspect the house again, but he take everything out the house. So he won't have to say everything in the house is unclean, so that you won't lose your property or anything you need. You won't be without. So even in the this particular plague, that the Creator shows love for the individual, but it also tells you a lot about the individual. And when you had to bring that, say, oh wow, they know he had all that in there. I thought he was a pauper. You know, all this stuff is exposed to the street. They usually say that's from the term, when we get to the word Metzora, they break that word down as Mosi Shem Ra. Metzora, Mosi Shem Ra. And that means, in a sense, they take the letters and make it a acronym for a bringer a bad name. So they associate that particular plague with one that tends to gossip. That's a traditional approach from it. And most of the times when you find out that people had that, it's usually, except for Naaman, so to speak, because we don't know much about that top general that was a part of a Syrian army, but we know about Moshe as using it as a sign, you know, that showed to Israel that he met with the God of their fathers. But what Moshe said, that people will not believe me. How did Moshe Rabbeinu left? You know, he wound up staying on the other side because Creator said, because you didn't believe in me. So we got to be careful too about what we say. Well, how Miriam, you know, she just talked about Moshe concerning the Ethiopian woman. And Moses didn't seem to have a problem with it. But the Creator had a serious problem with it. And hit her with leprosy. Traditional say Aharon got hit with the leprosy at the same time, but his was cured immediately, being he still had the anointing oil upon him. That's what they say. I don't know. I just say, but we know from the book clearly that Miriam was hit with leprosy and she had to be outside the camp for 7 days. Hence we read Moses giving his shortest prayer. You know, please God heal her now. So now we're just going to go into just read a little bit of the 14th chapter. I'm going to have to revisit it because I don't want to belabor anybody. But we're going to go into the 14th chapter of Leviticus and read some of the...
Leviticus chapter 14, verse 1. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And Yehudah spoke unto Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp. And the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of the leprosy be healed in the leper. Then shall the priest command to take of him that is to be cleansed 2 living clean birds, and cedar wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command to kill one of the birds in the earthen vessel over running water. As for the living bird, he shall take it and the cedar wood, and the scarlet and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water.
I'll stop right there before we get to the 7th. I'm not gonna go too deep into this here, but I want to bring out some highlights. I figure people could heard it already and read it again. I'm gonna touch on some of this stuff as we go forward next week. But one of the things that was interesting is that in the day of his cleansing, he shall be brought unto the priest. Again, that means somebody figure, hey, he looks better, but you know, but somebody had to say. That's why it's important for us to know what the symptoms look like. Whereas the guy brought it to the priest to find out if it was. But yet, your same friend that concerned about you is impatient and really want you to be part of the congregation of God again and be part of the family again. So it says, you know, when it seems correct, you know, at that time, then it goes on and say that, you know, he is brought into the priest, and the priest should go forth out the camp. and the priest shall look upon, and behold, if the plague of leprosy be healed in the leper. So now, what we have here is the priest had come out, they brought to the priest, and then they put him out the camp. Then the priest go out the camp just to look at him. But now, when he hear that he's clean, he's come to the priest, and the priest come to him. You know, so when you become whole in that sense, they both meet together. So that's the priest, the same one that said he's out, should be willing and glad to welcome a brother or sister back in this way of life. Because one of the hard things, if a person had the leprosy, which I glossed over a bit, if a guy have leprosy for a real amount of time, full leprosy, the priest can't do nothing for him, and he's supposed to have on a veil over his upper lip, walk around with a bell, and cry, "Tame, unclean, unclean." A person that has leprosy. That's a very humbling experience, that he's isolated in one area only for a diagnostic purpose, but after he's sure that he either has it or he don't have it, after he's sure that he has it, he's no longer isolated in a confined area, but he can't mingle with people. And so that's a humbling experience to say, I'm in a bad fix. Y'all can't come by me. I don't want you near me. Now, so isolation with COVID, what we're going through, is nothing compared to with this individual, because we all have masses, and we all ain't running around with no bells in our hand, and we all don't have all these type of skin blotches and stuff. You know, and one of the things is that why that kind of disease or skin problem, we don't see that today. Whereas we see other skin disease that could be malignant, but it's described what this particular disease is. And some comments is that we was closer to the Holy of Holies, closer to the Mishkan, and at the time closer to when the temple was standing, when God, the Creator Himself, actually dwelt amongst us in those circumstances. So therefore, His presence be felt for good, or if a person's not right, it'd be felt for evil in that person. But since we done fell so far back these days and times that we become almost impervious to anything that's clean. We've been in such an unclean state so long that we really can't understand what it is to be fully holy, because we don't get into that state. The closest we ever get to that state is when you hear the shofar blow on Yom Kippur, and the minute you take a couple of steps, you might have messed that up. So I hope you got something out of what I said. I know it's kind of brief this particular time, and any mistakes been my own, and anybody that need to address anything about what I said or concerning this particular syndrome, then feel free to leave a comment. And with that, I thank the brothers from D.C.B and the platform, and I hope y'all continue to support their platform. And with that, I say Shalom Aleichem and Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom, Shabbat Shalom Lakad.